Welcome to the Barnabas Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Cloyd Brown, and I'd like to welcome you. Welcome, welcome. If this is your first time listening, this is your first time watching the Barnabas Speaks podcast, is a podcast about encouragement, podcast about empowerment, and a podcast about faith. So, let's get started. I'm actually checking the game. If you see what the score is for the Lakers and the Nuggets, but what I want to share with you, what I want to say with you is thank you for all that continue to come out, continue to listen, continue to just truly be a blessing to me because they continue to support, and so I'm thankful for that. And we're doing some different things as I try to do YouTube, thinking about doing it, recording the podcast via Facebook Live. So we're definitely working on some things, and I just want to say thank you for your support, your continued love. And so as we continue to move forward, need to fix something. And so yeah, as we continue to move forward, I just want to say thank you. I want to make sure that everyone gets that. So let us move towards the this week. We have been talking about, not this week, but we have been talking about going to this subject of sex, food, and money. Or how do you want to say it? Sex, money, and food, money, sex, and food, whatever it is. And I chose this because I was reading a book. And the book that I was reading is I'm just reading scripture with Western eyes. And part of one of the first sections in the book is about sex, food, and money. And it made me think about, as I was praying and I was reading, as I was looking through it, it made me truly think about some of the things that we just don't cover in the church. We don't cover in our families, the things that we don't cover. And it generally, it, it, it causes a challenge. It definitely causes a challenge sometimes because people are just they are they are not prepared for it. We do not prepare people for it. We do not prepare our children for it. And what we do is we end up raising children or adults that are ill-equipped. One of my favorite parts or one of my favorite things that Dave Ramsey says, the money guru says that our parents were doing two things. They had two things they never talked about: sex and money. And specifically in our low socioeconomic community, in our Black communities, we do not talk about these things, and it puts our next generation at a disadvantage because they don't know how to maneuver and deal with it. I think about all the things that was taught to me, and so today we're going to talk about money and kind of tackle that. And we may interchange in between here, so I don't want to feel like we're specific. We do have a surprise for next week. We do have a surprise, welcoming some guests, and then in October, I'm welcoming another guest. And so we really are trying to, like I said, and definitely improve and to expand the show, the podcast. And so anyway, so I think about I think about money, and I began to really meditate and think about some of the things that were talked about or weren't talked about when I was a child or a teenager coming into money. And I knew kind of how to save, but not really. Like you want to hold on to your money so you can get your toy and stuff like that, but it wasn't really something that we brought up. And I think about how we view credit, how I was told to view credit really, and it was something that it was almost like a fear. It was one of those things where don't get a credit card, but I was not taught anything about credit. And I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my family, my upbringing, because the reality of it is they may have had a limited understanding of it, and maybe they didn't. But that's how I'm viewing it. And so I was afraid of credit, but when I ran into it, I was ill prepared. I was uneducated about it, and so of course I began to rack up a certain amount of debt. And so most of my grade, I don't have a lot of credit. Like I was saying, I don't have like a lot of credit card debt. Uh, the majority of my debt generally came from when I joined the military. I had a lot of hospital debt. So if you're watching, you'll see in my hand, you'll see these stitches where I had stitches right here, and so I broke a glass in my hand, and I had stitches. And when I got the stitches, I went to the emergency room. So you think about that. How I can't even remember. I think just the emergency room visit alone was $500. And so, and that was that. And I'm not even thinking about how much the stitches cost. The emergency room alone cost $500. And so then my stitches got infected. So then I had to go into the hospital, get an IV, and I was in the hospital for about a week and a half, maybe a week. So I was in the hospital for a week, getting this infection pushed out and everything like that. And so I didn't have insurance at the time. So even when I went to insurance, I did not have insurance. So when I went, all that was just straight. That's gonna be cash, straight as or Randy Moss said, straight cash on me. And so it was really me trying to maneuver and get through how to uh, how to pay this. It wasn't even a thought like it. So later on down the line, I ended up joining the military, and that was the bulk of my uh, my my credit debt. Like so, even then, so I couldn't get a car because I think I needed a car. I couldn't do anything because I didn't have credit. I couldn't get those things without a cosigner. So I go to the Air Force, and like to the point to where when you go in at 23, they do a credit check. When I did my credit check, and then in order to get my security clearance, I had to deal with certain parts of debt. So if you go before 23, they don't do a credit check, but 23 and older, they do a credit check. So I did a credit check, and so in order to get my security clearance, I had to do certain things. So I had to write out a plan. And so this is the first time really that I'm kind of really dealing with finance. I had to write a plan for how I'm going to pay my debt. And so, but then at the same time, I ended up getting the military star card, which I want to say there's no interest, but it still goes against your credit. And so, so I had to do a deal then. So this is my first credit card, if you will. I was spending money here and there. And so, but they told me to come up with a plan. So I came up with a plan because without a security clearance, I couldn't do certain things in my job. And so I come up with a plan. They grant me my security clearance. So now let's stick to the plan. And I followed the plan. And so I ended up deploying, and I used that big lump sum of money that because at this point I'm single. I had moved out of my the barracks, so I was getting all the money that comes with that. And so basically I was stacking all my money. And I paid off my hospital bills, paid off my military star, and I was doing well. I think I may have had a cell phone or something bill, and I think I paid that off as well. And so so I come back and I'm doing well, but I still don't have, well, I have that type of credit. I don't have the credit even enough to get a car. So I get back and I want to buy a car, and I have basically how they look like. You don't have enough credit without having a cosigner. And I think some of the people I reached out to said they didn't feel comfortable co-signing. And so I just like, okay. So I ended up buying a car cash. So I bought the car cash. I think it was at a buy here, pay here place. And so I cashed it like that. And so, but I didn't really understand money. And if you really think about it, no one even, I'd never had a conversation that really outside of don't get a credit card or stay away from credit cards. I didn't have any type of education into the idea of money. And I think that becomes the challenge because I am now at the time I'm 23 before I really begin to understand money, understand credit, understand how money works. Now, this is the other side of it. I have been working since I was 14, from 14 to 23. We'll just say from 14 to 23. So I've always roughly had a job. So I've been making money, but not never really understanding the concept of how money works, uh, and how credit works. And so what I realized is that I began to, I didn't realize that older, I had a cycle of using lump sums of money to pay off my debt rather than managing my debt and manage my money. And so, but so it's 23. I mean, so I think I'm not deployed. So I had to be 25, 26. Yes, 25 and 26, because I joined the Air Force at 23. So that's 2006. Yeah. And so around 20, I deployed, well, when I was 25. And so I'm still at a good age, but I'm still trying to learn money. So I don't know anything about stocks and investments and anything like that. And so, and I couldn't even being in the military, I couldn't even find a way to get a car without a cosigner because of my lack of credit, which is a weird thing, and so to speak, itself. But I'm actually glad that I paid cash for my car. That was that. So, but I had the credit to get. It was weird because I was able to get apartments and stuff like that, but I just couldn't get a car. And so, with that being said, I, uh, I never really got an education in money and money management and how to deal with it. And so there was, because when you don't have a knowledge, there's a certain fear of it, a certain fear of credit and how credit works, a certain fear of and you don't identify it as fear, but because you don't know how to work through it and work with it, you don't avoid money, but you oftentimes avoid money management. And that is part of the thing. When we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about food, we don't talk about money. We do not. We put our families, our youth, our communities at a disadvantage because it does not equip them to be able to deal with it. And so there's a certain avoidance because they don't understand it. Now, there's going to be some people that don't understand it and want to seek knowledge. But if you don't put that thirst for more information, the more knowledge in there, then they're going to avoid it. And that really deals with how they work and move around in the world. And so I want to, I know I feel like this is the longest intro ever, but one of the things I want to talk about is Ecclesiastes 10:19. Portion of it says, "Money answers all things." And a lot of times in the church, something that we say and we quote incorrectly is that money is the root of all evil. But the scripture actually says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And so, and then Ecclesiastes tells us that money answers all things. And so, if that is the case, we have to begin to decide how do we maneuver through this thing at the church, but also what we should be doing at the church is equipping our community. We should be equipping our community. We should be assisting our community. We should be helping our community to grow and to be good citizens and good partners in their community. And so if we're not doing those things, we have to begin to ask why. But also just if part of raising children is to help them to be equipped to be functioning and contributing members of society, then we have to equip them on a lot of levels. We have to equip them on in different paths and different ways. And so we have to make sure, let me cut this Wi-Fi off. We have to make sure that that's what we're doing. We have to make sure that we are talking to our children, we're talking to our community, we are holding programs in our church that helps the people get a different view of money, because it is something that we have not been doing. We're failing. And as a black man, uh, I know that my community, my race, my whether it's the inner city or it's in the country, we have not been given a full education, and it's not something that we learn in school. Even in the height, if you think about the different things that you have in school, like I took, they had wood shop, they had automotive skills, and they had home economics, stuff like that, but none of it deals with how to function through money. And if the Bible how to function with money, to how to be better with money, there's no investment clubs or anything like that. And so I know there's some high schools. There's a high school. So I live in Cary, but I'm in the Raleigh Durham area, so the RDU or the RTP. And there's a school in Durham, North Carolina, called Hillside High School, and they have a banking school, and so that teaches, which is good, but that type of education is far and few in between, and so that means that if we're not going to get it in schools, or we're not going to press the student, the school board to put it into schools, and we're not going to, if we're not getting it there, that means that we have a responsibility to make sure that we're putting some type of curriculum together to teach about money. Because once again, if money answers all things, and we found out that money is not the root of all evil, but the love of money, but we still, well, we don't have to love money, but we should understand money, and we should understand how it works and how our society uses. Because we cannot help. We the people that are watching this, that are in America, we are in a capitalist economy, right? If we're in a capitalist economy, if we are, that's the kind of economy we function and move and work in, then that means that we have to understand how it works. We have to begin to understand how the stock market works. And so we need these mentorship groups and these community churches and these community development programs to truly begin to provide education if we're going to be functional in our society. And so it means more reading. It means that instead of that we need to be putting rich dad poor dad in people's hands. That we need to be putting I want to say it's Napoleon Hill. Don't hold me to that, but how to think and grow rich. I want to make sure. Yeah, Napoleon Hill, the book Think and Grow Rich, or Dave Ramsey's debt management books. We need to put those things in these schools, or not in schools, but in these programs. And so challenge children to read it and understand it, and but also it means that we have to have money discussions at the house. We need to be talking about the economy, even if you don't say, hey, take your children and show them how to write a check and how the banking system works and things of that nature. We must equip the generation. If we're trying to break generational curses, we're trying to break systemic curses and systemic, if I get it out there, systemic routines and patterns and cycles. It literally means that we will have to, without a shadow of a doubt, begin to do these things, because a lot of things we be like, this is adult business, and the child should stay in the child's place. And I grew up that. But sometimes you're going to have to sit down at the kitchen table and say, hey, this is how this works. Let them understand what, okay, you told me not to get a credit card, but why? So what is the alternative? How do I function through that? Because I need credit to buy a house. I need credit to buy a car. Unless I just have straight cash. Once again, straight cash on me. And so if unless I have that, then I can't, I'm not going to be functioning. And if I have an unhealthy fear of it, then I can't, begin to transition and move through society in a healthy way. And that's what we're trying to do. If we're trying to, now let us go back to, let's point our fingers, let's point the screens, if you will, back to the church. And the church is trying to be a self-sustaining society, like the church in Acts was. If you look in Acts and you look at the book of Acts, you look at the church, that they had all things in common, but they all pooled their money together, i.e., as we talk about group economics. But as they poured their money together and they pooled their money together, they had all things in common. No one had a need that was not met because they could do that. But if we're going to do that, we have to do it with money because that is the mode of exchange. We're not doing the barter system. And so, if the way that we do it, so that means that we have to begin to have investment clubs in our churches, or at least to have inside of the youth programs that we're having the stock market game. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and we have a youth training and mentoring program called Kappa League. God, right, but under that is Kappa League. And one of the things that we do with the Kappa Leaguers is we have a stock market game where they understand how the stock works and they understand how to invest, and so it's equipping and pouring back into them. And if we're going to break these cycles, and we're going to break the systemic racism cycle and the systemic classism cycle, if we're going to break those things, it has to come from education, information, and the education is not only going to be inside the school system. It's just not. And whether you believe conspiracy theories or not, if you're depending on the government to teach you, or to teach your children, and to help how to lift themselves up by understanding money, then you're going to be sadly mistaken. And so, what the hope is to have a community that is not dependent on what the government provides, whether it's the community in the church, whether it's the community in the cities, the communities in the rural areas. That is the idea to how to because once we begin to understand money, once we begin to understand taxes, once we begin to understand investments in stocks, once we begin to invest in those things, then we can multiply the knowledge and share the knowledge and begin to teach other communities to bring it up. And so if you want to understand how does my community have a greater impact on elections, how does my community have a greater impact on city zoning, how does my community, it starts whether we want it or we like it or not, it starts with money. It's just what it is. That is the thing. But we can't do it if we're not teaching it. And so I am still learning. I'm still working on making sure that my credit is good. I'm still understanding about stocks, and the fact is that no one told me that that if I don't have an awesome retirement plan, that I should look into a 401k, or that I should look into getting a Roth RIA and stuff like that. No one really told us that. But now that I know, I now pass on that knowledge. And so now when I run into a younger person, when I was in the Air Force, a younger airman, even in my fraternity, if I'm a younger Kappa, then I share what I have gotten, even if it's not a lot. Hey, make sure. So if they get a new job, I said, make sure that you enroll into the 401k. It's silly not to, especially find out what they're matching. Let's begin there and go from there. For your first car coming out, don't feel like you need to get a new car, a brand new car. Get you something used or something that. But then instead of doing that, you could put some of that payment into investing or buying some real estate. Because right now the rage and the idea is group economics, but part of that is understanding how economics work. And I'm for group economics. I'm for for people coming in and buying properties and buying. I'm for buying back the hood. I'm for buying back the neighborhood. I'm for that. I'm for churches funding businesses and entrepreneurship things and helping develop a community. I'm for those things. But we have to have an understanding of how our economy works. We have to have an understanding of how money works. We have to have an understanding on how to speak to the politicians through your giving and through the fundraisers that you do. You have to have that understanding. And if you do not have that understanding, if you do not have that wisdom, that knowledge, we as a community, we as a church, we as a faith group, will always be behind, because we are not really beginning to think about the things that push our community. If we're being honest, if we're going to have not even a seat at the table, but if we're going to be able to demand something from politicians, if we're going to be able to demand something from our city council, from our county board, or from the police departments, from the fire department, from the school boards, from even if you really think about it, even from our neighborhood, what's it called, our HOAs, that starts with having fiscal power. Now we try to run away from that, the idea of power, but that's what it is. If we're going to, we have to have certain levels of fiscal power. We have to be able to leverage our buying power. We have to be able to go to the city council and talk about the zoning commissions, and talk about the school redistricting. And we have to talk about, hey, we want to buy this commercial property, and what we're going to do with this is this. They're not going to believe you if you don't have the collateral and the money. And that's going to be a group economics thing. But each person has to bring their money to the table. Because if we as whatever group that you're in, I'm a faith believer, but I'm also a black man, and so it's two different things. So I want to go back and build my community. I want to build. I want to be able to say that we, whether it's in the form of the church, that we bought this strip mall, this shopping center, and we're going to fill each one of these so that we are able to provide things back in the communities that we come from, back in the communities where people that look like me, that sound like me, that are in the same class as me, are started off in the same class as me, and that they can be lifted up. And that they can be lifted up. And that then I can say, then when they say, how did you do this? I'm going to say that it came from the wisdom and knowledge that God has provided me. I could do none of this without God. See, when you begin to address people, this is what James is saying. And James goes on to say that, he says, if you show me your faith, I'll show you my works. And he's not saying that what he's not saying that you have to work for salvation. That's not what he's saying. What he is saying is that you can't have a man or a woman ask you for bread, and you do not take care of their natural need, but say, I can pray with you. They'll be distracted by the fact that that the stomach is growling. They'll be distracted that the rain is coming down them. You haven't provided them any shelter, and you want to talk to them about God. But right now, the only thing they can think about is, if you don't help me, I'm going to take that from you. Because that's what I'm thinking about. I know you keep on talking to me about God, but where's God now? And God sent you there to be Him on this earth and to be able to provide. God gave you provision to provide, but if we do not know how to manage provision, then we cannot provide. And we must now be able to use the provision that God has provided to now provide wisdom and knowledge and things to other people. But if we do not have a true understanding of how to utilize provision, we can't truly function how God wants us to function. I know, right? This is not prosperity church preaching. That's not what I'm not talking about. That money coming to me. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about you stand in this line, you'll get you and you give me $100. I'm not saying that God that everyone's going to be rich and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that we have to seek knowledge on that subject, and we cannot just seek knowledge and not share it. We have to begin to have those conversations. We need to be having economic and financial conversations at our table. And stop worrying so much and being so bogged down with the fact of how little you know. You learn from conversation. You learn from having these difficult conversations. You learn from research and things of that nature. And we're going to pull each other up. We're going to talk about this. I'm not sure how long we're going to talk about this, but we're going to get this. We're going to grow. We're going to stop avoiding these conversations. We're going to stop avoiding the conversations about money. We're going to stop avoiding the conversations about sex. We're going to stop avoiding the conversation about food and healthy eating. Because there's someone that can grow. There's someone that can grow from our conversations. There's someone, if we're saying that experience is the best teacher, part of that experience that's going to happen, part of that is that people are going to learn from your experience, not them experiencing it themselves. If we're going to break cycles, it starts with us having honest conversation and being honest about some of your pitfalls. Parents, stop feeling like you have to be perfect in order to parent your children, in order to teach your children. They'll learn from your mistakes, but you have to be able to be willing to share your mistakes. You have to talk about this, the dumb mistake that you made, where you bought this, but that, and not this. There's people there's rich people that will say, "I wish that I would have got it. I wish that I would have got it on the ground floor." There's people that wish that they would have bought Apple stock back in the '90s when it was low, in the '80s when it was low. I wish that some of the money that I got, even when I was in college and I was getting refund checks, that I put some of that into investing. I wish. And so but I can share that now. If you're gonna get a refund check, yeah, take a put 10% of that. Let's put 10% of that refund check. Let's invest that in the stock market. Let's put that in. Let's start a Roth RA or IRA. Or IRA is uh, uh, like if I didn't need to know what it means, I would. It is. I am tripping. It's individual. I knew it was individual. I was second guessing the individual retirement account. And I think one of the beauties, like I was like, what's the difference between? I like the Roth IRA because I pay tax on it now. On the IRA, you get. I know that you pay tax on that later, and so I like, hey, let me pay tax now. Let me get pay him the same way he's going to get, and then I invest the IRA, the Roth IRA, into Roth IRA. And we're going to talk about some things. It means that I'm going to do some more research and learn. But as I learn, I share. And we need to get that attitude and that idea that we have to share. There's people that need this information. And we're going to change our communities. We're going to change our churches. And we're going to change our impact from our community and from our churches. We have to begin to learn about these things. And we have to begin to equip our youth with it. Uh, if anyone that's in Raleigh, the Raleigh area, and they're looking to get their teenagers into a program that teenage men into a program that will help them grow, help them learn, and maybe teach you some things that you may not have known. Uh, I'll ask that you consider Capital League. You can email me for more information at Cloyd, Cloyed .s.brown@gmail.com. Once again, that email is Cloyd, Cloyed .s.brown@gmail.com, and just make the subject Capital League. Uh, but begin to look at those programs. And for you that are good in financial programs, that you need to be volunteering. Uh, I won't say what you need to do, but I think that'll be helpful and a very good thing to do, to begin to look about places where you can volunteer to be able to provide that type of information. Because there's some people, the more wealthy they have these conversations at the dinner table, and they begin to understand, and they're given stocks, and right now some of us don't have stocks to share or to pass down. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the way that our community, our churches look at money, because money is one of the things that we did not talk about. We never talked about it in church and at home. I just know that they wanted more of it. And so let us begin to talk about these things that we have been avoiding. And we're going to continue to talk about money and some of the things that we wish that we had learned about money, things that they never told us. So I pray that this has been enlightening. I pray that I can give you some more information as the week goes on. And we could begin to press forward on that. But I want to thank everyone that's listened. Thank everyone that's sharing this. Please, please, please hit that subscribe button. Please, please, please hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and like it. If you're feeling generous, you have to give me 5 stars on iTunes, on the Apple Podcast. Give me 5 stars. The more stars, it moves me up and gets more people to listen to it. And I believe that we are talking about things that are a blessing to the soul, and that people can grow from it. So consider if you would consider giving me 5 stars. The Barnabas Project. Well, this is the Barnabas Speaks podcast, but this falls on the umbrella of the Barnabas Project. And there's more things coming from the Barnabas Project and from this podcast. There's more podcasts to be birthed out of this. I need to make contacts, or trying to help somebody launch a podcast. So we're going to do some more. We're going to do some really good things. I have some surprises to you. We will have some fellow podcasters on next week. We're going to talk about the same thing. We'll continue on. And thank you, everyone that has listened, everyone that has shared. And I think that I feel like God is telling me that this needs to be live. So next week we'll probably be live on Facebook and YouTube, but you also get the actual podcast itself. And I pray that it's been a blessing. I pray that it's helped you and assist you. And remember, never let your independence rob you from your dependence on God. God bless you. God love you. See you next week.